Hey guys, welcome into the video. My name is Dana, and I've been asked by Great Fermentations to make a little, just a little feature on my process here on the Blichmann BrewEasy, and how to get the last little bit of efficiency out of the system. It's a great system, very easy to use, works as build, but if you want to get the last little bit you possibly can as far as efficiency out of this system, takes a few more steps, a few more precautions to make sure you get the last little bit. If you're happy with getting, say, 60% and brewing in about 3 hours a day, that's fine. You can up your brew bill, but these are for the people that want to get 70% and higher with their system. Great Fermentations has already put out some instructional videos on the system, so this won't be a all-inclusive step A to Z for the BrewEasy. If you want that, you can look up their other videos here on YouTube. But this will be more of a graduate level type course, showing some of the finer points of what at least I do in my process that seems to work very well. I usually average around 75% or higher with this system. So I guess we'll start today by just giving an overview of what we'll work with here. This is my 10-gallon electric BrewEasy system, and it is equipped with some stainless steel quick disconnects throughout the system. Not required, but certainly makes things a little easier on brew day, and I'll show you why a little later on in the video. Also equipped with the Tower of Power LTE controller and the Blichmann Therminator attached to this stand here, also by Blichmann, and the Therminator also has the stainless steel quick disconnects, and this is extremely useful, and as I said, I'll show you why a little later. We'll be pumping into this conical fermenter here inside my fermentation chamber. The fermenter is a 17-gallon, it's a half-barrel conical by SS Brewtech, also equipped with a little beer bug up here. I won't be going into that today, but have that as well, and just a little work area here. And I always have my laptop out to run calculations and spreadsheets, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So appreciate you watching, and here we go. Okay, so step one, before you even fire up the kettles, before you warm up water, before you pour your grain in, is to figure your pH of your mash. I can't stress how important this is. I tried to skip it when I was first starting here with the BrewEasy. I had never touched water chemistry before I got this system. I figured it was probably more trouble than what it was really going to be worth to me as far as return on efficiency, and I was completely wrong. My first few batches with this system, I was getting terrible efficiency. I was scratching my head. I was doing everything that it said in the manual except checking pH. And as soon as I sprung for a digital pH meter and started tweaking my water chemistry, my efficiency came up exponentially. Can't stress how important this is. If you don't have a digital pH meter, or at bare minimum the test strips, but really you want a digital pH meter, it's something you have to get. Unfortunately, you want to try to keep your costs down, but it's just, if you're going to own this system, it is absolutely vital for you to pick one of these up. So, that being said, starting with our water chemistry. I use a spreadsheet that can be had for free here on easywatercalculator.com. These people make a great spreadsheet for brewing, and I highly recommend you use it, and I also highly recommend you donating to these people. It's a free service, and it has been invaluable in my process since I started using it. So you go to easywatercalculator.com, you download the Excel spreadsheet, and you come up with this. Now, what you're going to have to do is, if you don't have an actual water assessment from your specific house or your well, if you have a well, you're going to have to send off and get a water chemistry breakdown. I didn't have to do that. I use city water here in Bradenton, Florida, Sarasota, Florida. So what I did was I contacted my local water utilities lab, and after finally getting through to the right person, I had them send me a breakdown of the water chemistry specifically as it relates to what we care about in brewing. So what we care about are the parts per million of calcium, magnesium, sodium, chloride, sulfate, and then your water hardness or alkalinity or bicarbonate. You can switch back and forth on this spreadsheet, whatever number you can get. So I used those values, and now they're not going to be exactly perfect to what's coming out of my tap right now, but it gets you close enough to start with. So I punched these values in that I got from my local water lab. you go ahead and put in your mash water, and you only have to put in the mash water with our system. As you know, we use total water quantity, so you punch in mash water. In this case, I'm doing 10 gallons of a high gravity IPA that I like to brew, and I've calculated that I'm going to need 18 gallons of water for my brew day today, and you can put 0 for the sparge water. Moving on down from there, you punch in your grain bill. This one was easy for me. There's only 2 types of grain in my build today. It's just a base 2-row and then some Munich at 25 pounds and 3.5 pounds respectively. From there, you'll get a estimated pH. Now, you want, as per the spreadsheet, to stay between 5.4 to 5.6. Really depends on the style you're doing. Some styles will call for maybe a 5.2 mash pH. I like to stay right about 5.4 with this style. So, to get your pH at 5.4, you have down here a field for your water modifiers. I figured today I actually had to adjust the pH up with this specific grain bill. So I'm going to need 15 grams of chalk or calcium bicarbonate, and I also need 16 grams of baking soda. And then to up the magnesium content, I just added about 5 grams of Epsom salts. And down here at the very bottom, you'll find the ranges of which types of additions you're going to need for your water modifiers, and the ranges you want your calcium, magnesium, sodium, chloride, etc., to be in. And as we see down here, if it comes out clearly, I'm in the range for all of them. Now, the most important part of this is your calcium content. Spoken with John Blichmann directly, and it makes sense. You want to have at least 100 parts per million of calcium in your water chemistry. Because we use a total volume of water for your mash, you have additional buffering power of the water. So to counteract that, you want to have a higher content of calcium in your mash. So at this point, I have 121 parts per million of calcium, which should work out just perfect for what we're going to do here today. So again, easy water calculator spreadsheet. This is going to get you close. And then once you actually mash in and dough in and get up to your temperature, you can check the pH with your digital pH meter. With any luck, you'll come in pretty close to what you estimated here. And if you don't hit it just perfectly, you can go ahead and add during your mash. You can add a little bit more Epsom salts or baking soda or whatever you need to do to hit that pH, acids, salts, whatever. So this will get you close to work off of. Hopefully you nail it, but if you don't, you can change it during your mash. But again, guys, this is the most important part about getting good efficiency out of your BrewEasy system. Can't stress it enough. Take the extra 15 minutes and spend the extra 80 bucks on the digital pH meter. You will not regret it. You'll spend more than that in the additional grain you're going to need to buy if you're only getting 60% efficiency over a couple batches anyway. That's how I looked at it. So that's the water chemistry portion, and we will move on to adding your brewing salts. Okay guys, one thing I wanted to point out before we go ahead and add our brewing salts and acids here is adding the water. One thing I've found that's extremely helpful and cuts a little time off on your brew day here is adding your brewing water all to your bottom kettle. What this does is it takes the recirculation out of the loop, and you're getting some heating loss here in the pump and in the lines. So what you can do is heat up right to strike temp in the bottom kettle. It stays insulated, and instead of trying to recirculate and dealing with your orifice and having the water recirculate slow, it takes quite a while to heat to strike temp that way. So if your total brewing water is not greater than 20 gallons, what you can do here, and as you see here, I have a hose running up through a filter, which I use because our water here in Florida is not the greatest for brewing. So I filter through this filter here, and I go ahead and I add my total water quantity to the bottom kettle. And from there, I'll turn the controller on. I'll crank it up to 168 or whatever I calculate my strike temp to be, and I'll heat it all in that bottom kettle as opposed to recirculating while you're doing it. If you can't do that, if you have more than 20 gallons or more than what your bottom kettle will hold for your total brewing water, which I've had before on a 15-gallon batch, and by the way, this system is capable of doing 15-gallon batches. The 10-gallon system, I've done it several times, will handle most 15-gallon batches. So in that case, you may have more than 20 gallons for your total brewing water. You can add some to the top, some to the bottom, begin a recirculation, and do not use an orifice to do that. You're slowing down your recirculation rate with an orifice here, which in turn would make it a total longer time to heat your water. So if you want to cut a little bit of time off, this is just a tip. Go ahead and add all of your brewing water to the bottom kettle first, heat it up there, and then once you get to strike temperature, you can begin your recirculation for a few minutes, add your brewing salts and acids, and then you can dough in. So just a tip. Okay guys, now that we're heating water up in our bottom kettle, now is a good time to go ahead and mix up your brewing salts if you need any, which you probably will. So what I use here is just a little tiny scale. It's the same scale you would use to measure hops or whatnot, and just a little cup. I start always, no matter what the batch is, with some Camden tablets. Usually you only just need one. And then what this does is it gets rid of the chlorides in your water. That's a big problem we have here in Florida. If you have chlorides in your water, it's normally what they add instead of chlorine these days. These things are great. One tablet is enough to do 10 or 15 gallons. So I just take the butt of some scissors here. I take a Camden tablet, I crush it up, and that'll go in with your brewing salts. So after that's done, go ahead and use your scale, and you add what you need to add. I'll zero the scale here, and we'll start with some Epsom salts. I figured I needed 5 grams, make sure we're on the right scale here, 5 grams of Epsom salts. So go ahead and take some Epsom salt that you have. And there's 5. I've also calculated that I'm going to need 15 grams of chalk and 15 or 16 grams of baking soda. So you continue on and you add that to a little cup, and we'll talk about adding that here in a minute. I'm going to continue adding my brewing salts, and I'll be back with you shortly. Alright, so here we are. I've reached my dough-in temperature in my bottom kettle, and I've gone ahead and started a recirculation through the pump and up and through the top kettle, and I've set my auto sparge. So now would be the perfect time to add your brewing salts. So let's take the top off here, and as you can see, we're doing a nice little recirculation. The auto sparge is doing its thing, and we'll go ahead and add our brewing salts. Here are my pre-measured brewing salts that I just showed you I measured on the scale. And you're going to need a little spoon because they're not all going to dissolve right away. So you just go ahead and pour them in the top kettle is what I usually do. And you might get a little clumping. It's similar to kind of adding dry malt extract. Not quite as much of a pain. And then I kind of dip the cup in there and get the last little bit dissolved. And the baking soda dissolves really well, but some of the other ones will not dissolve quite as nicely. So what I do is I'll go ahead and let it settle a little bit just for this purpose. Usually about 2 or 3 minutes I'll let it settle down to the bottom, and then I'll just take this spoon. It'll usually whirlpool down in the bottom of the kettle, and I'll just break that little whirlpool up. Give it a stir, and that should be enough to dissolve it all. If right before you dough in you see some of your brewing salts kind of stuck down there, just go ahead and give it another quick stir so you get them all dissolved. And now, after we let this recirculate for a minute or two, we are set to dough in. Alright, so it's that time where we are going to mash in. I've gone ahead and closed all of our valves, shut our pump off, shut the pump throttling valve off, so everything's closed at this point, and we are right on our mash in temperature. I calculated at 162.8 degrees. Our brewing salts have had a chance to circulate throughout the system, so we should have a constant pH going in the system, and we'll go ahead and mash in. Important to take the tensioner off your auto sparge when you do this so it can raise with the level of the grain, because you're going to have to reset your auto sparge. From there you can go ahead and grab your mash paddle. Just give it a little stir here. Just trying to get everything wet, everything submerged. There's quite a bit of grain here. And as you can see, the auto sparge comes back up. And what I do is I take these heat-proof, waterproof gloves. I got them on Amazon, they're really cheap. And that's what I use when I reset my auto sparge, as this is extremely hot in here. So there we have the auto sparge set, and now we just go ahead and let it sit for about 10 minutes before we start recirculating and get any air pockets out of here. Let the grain bed settle. Okay, so we've waited our 10 minutes here, and our grain bed is settled. All the oxygen has come up out of the top of the grain bed, so we should have no air pockets in here. And I just wanted to point something quick out. We're going to go ahead and reset our target mash temperature here on the controller. Now, I want to mash at 152 degrees, but I know that my system is about 2 degrees of loss in this situation. So something that the manual doesn't tell you is that you're going to have to figure out for your specific system the temperature that your basement or wherever your brew is at, and find out what the difference is going to be here in your system loss. My experimentation shows that I'm about 2 degrees different from my mash, actual mash temperature and the loss to the system, so you need to add just a little bit of a cushion here on your mash temp. So there's that. We're going to go ahead and start our recirculation mash. So there we have it. We're going to go ahead and let it start circulating, let our mash temp stabilize, and once we get a nice, good, uniform solution in here, as you know, we just had normal water in the bottom, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on your orifice, you'll get a nice uniform solution. You can check your pH and start your mash time. So we'll pick it up from checking the pH. Alright, so we've restarted our circulation here, and something's happened that gives me an opportunity to talk about something that happens quite a bit with this system, and I think it's a huge deal as far as efficiency goes. I think it's a major problem if you don't catch it, if you don't realize what's going on. And the number one thing here is to make sure you have your brewmometers calculated. These aren't just for show. You might think that because you have this fancy digital controller you don't need to pay attention to this, but in all actuality I find that this brewmometer here on the mash tun is the most important temperature measuring device in the system. So go ahead and calibrate these, and you can do that with boiling water. It'll show you how to do it in your manual. But make sure they're accurate. They're not going to be as accurate as digital, but make sure they are close enough to be trustworthy. So what happened here is I started a recirculation, and my temperature controller was showing that we were recirculating 154 degree water with my 2 degree offset here. But my actual middle of my mash tun was showing that we were only at 144 degrees. Which is not optimum for conversion. You'll get some conversion there, but not optimal, obviously. And I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes this mash tun will cool off very quickly and not reflect what the controller is showing. So, to fix that, what you want to do is overshoot here on this controller. I'm starting to go back in the correct direction. You can see right here, if you can make it out, it's about 148 degrees now. It had gotten all the way down to 142 when I started recirculation. So what you can do here is overshoot on your digital controller. In this case, I've overshot by 15 degrees. And once you get a nice recirculation from the bottom to the top, that 169 degree water in this case will start warming your mash tun back up. So when you hit your target mash temperature, you can go ahead and lower your digital controller back down to 154, 152, 156, whatever you're trying to mash at, and all three should match at that point. But at the beginning of the mash, you need to be very careful that what you're showing here is what you're showing here, and you're actually getting your right temperature here. If you were to trust this as gospel here, this digital controller, you could be 15-20 degrees off up on this in your actual mash tun and not getting any conversion, or not getting the most efficient conversion you could, which is a major factor in your end of the day efficiency. So again, don't trust what you see here on this digital controller as gospel. You're controlling temperature measuring device in the entire system for this BrewEasy is right here in the middle of your mash tun. It's taking actual mash tun temperatures, and it is definitely the most important one in the system. So we're now back at about 150 degrees, coming up close to our 152, and I'm going to start backing this digital controller back down to 154, and then it should be good to go. Once we have temperature stabilized through the entire system at what you want for mash temp, at that point you check your pH, make an adjustment if you need to, and then mash for an hour or half an hour, or whatever your recipe calls for. So we will be on to measuring pH. Alright, so we've got our temperatures nailed here at 152 degrees. So now it is time to check pH with our handy dandy digital pH meter. Go ahead and stick this here in the mash, see what we get. Looking for somewhere around 5.4 or so. So as we see here, I'm not sure if you can make that out, but my estimate wasn't that great. Right now, we're at 6.2 pH, which is nowhere near close to what we need to get optimum conversion. So, if you had just maybe taken the water calculation spreadsheet and estimated what you thought you were going to be at, and maybe you thought you had it nailed at 5.4, you could be right here way off at 6.2 if you didn't have a digital pH meter to take that reading. So we will go ahead and use some more brewing salts to lower the pH back down to an acceptable range. Alright guys, so I have uncovered the error of my ways. I went back and reviewed the spreadsheet and noticed that I had 20 milliliters of phosphoric acid punched into the sheet from my last stout that I brewed and forgot to clear it out. So that's why our pH came in so high. No problem, and it provides a good teaching point as to why it's so important to have a digital pH meter. And we can always fix that with some phosphoric acid. So, luckily, this acid dissolves quickly, it's a liquid, and we will just add this to our mash, and it should bring our pH down quite quickly. So we're going to add this phosphoric acid into the mash, give it about 5 minutes to recirculate around. I've shown that I needed about 25 milliliters to hit the mash pH that I wanted. So give it about 5 minutes to circulate around, we'll check it again, hopefully it's nailed at that point. Alright, so after we added our acids back to get our pH back down to where it should have been from the start, we'll check it again, and we'll see that we're right there, right where we want to be. 5.4, 5.5, right where we need to be for conversion. So we're happy with that. Once your pH is checked, stabilized, the only other thing to do during the mash is every 15 minutes just go ahead and rake the upper third of your grain bed. Don't try to rake all the way through, don't try to stir all the way down to the bottom, you'll get yourself a stuck mash. Just kind of move it around and get any kind of channeling that could be going on inside your mash bed out of there, and that should be good for a couple percent points on your efficiency. Beyond that, the beauty of this system is during the mash you can go ahead and have a seat, crack open a beer, and just chill out. There's not much more to do. Alright, so an hour's passed, and we've mashed at 152 degrees exactly for about an hour. The controller did a great job of holding the temperature once everything stabilized between the two vessels. Ended up using a 2.5 degree split on the controller, so I have the controller here set at 154.5, and if you can see it here, we're right at 152 in the mash. So here comes the next step. I don't believe they really outline it very well in the manual for this thing, and it's certainly something that's very important with this BrewEasy, and that is to ramp up your temperature to about 172 to 175 degrees. I like to do about 172 degrees at the end of the mash, just like you would by fly sparging with warmer water. Except in this system, you're going to raise the temperature here on the controller to try to get 172 degrees there, and you're going to hold that for 10 to 15 minutes just to ensure that all your conversion is complete. Now, the trick here in doing this is you raise the temperature of the controller, but you want to raise it higher than 172, just like we did earlier. You always want to overshoot these temperatures. I mean, it's not 100% necessary, but it saves you a whole ton of time when it comes to your brew day. If you just heat this thing to 172, what it'll do is it'll heat the water down here, and until it hits 172 on your temp sensor, and then it'll just start dumping 172 degree water into your mash tun, and that's going to take quite a while to get the entire volume of the vessel up to 172. So what I do is I like to overshoot by about 20 degrees, so we'll put this thing here to about 192. That way you're putting in 192 degree water in there, and when it mixes, your actual temperature in your mash tun will be up to 172 much quicker. So we'll go ahead and do that, and once we hit 172 here on the mash thermometer, I'll go ahead and back this down to 172 on the controller, and we'll hold it for about 10 minutes or so, and that should finish out our conversion. At that point, we'll come back and we'll talk about draining into your brew kettle. Alright, so now we've recirculated at 172 degrees here for 10 minutes. Everything matched up, worked great. Overshot by about 20 degrees, and as soon as we were approaching 172, usually you don't want to do it at 172 because then you'll go over. About 166 to 168 degrees, I backed it down to 172, and it held just perfectly on 172 for 10 minutes. Now it's time to shut the pump off and drain down into our brew kettle, and I'll show you there is a little trick there to doing that. I'm going to use my handy dandy hot gloves, and what you really want to do when you drain is to drain as slow as possible. And what I like to do, just so it's consistent and I know what I'm doing every time, is I change my orifice to the smallest that comes with the system, which is the ½ gallon per hour orifice. Right now we have the 1 1/4 gallon per hour orifice in there for a 10-gallon batch. So I'm going to go ahead and shut everything down and then change the orifice out, and then we will drain as slow as possible. This helps with the efficiency, I believe, and here we go. Usually just kind of use the tube here to pop the orifice out. It's very hot at this point, 170 some odd degrees, so I use these gloves. Once that's settled in there, just reattach as you normally would, and then drain out. Doing this slower will gain you maybe 2 or 3% in efficiency. It only takes 2 minutes to switch the orifice, so I think it's worth it. And we will begin the process of mashing out. Alright, so while we're waiting for our mash to drain out, you can even go ahead and start your kettle heating down there. It's not going to go to a boil before the end of this, so you can kind of cut some time off your brew day by getting your wort heated a little quicker that way. But I also wanted to take this few minutes to show the value of these disconnects, these quick disconnects I've installed throughout my system. So I have quick hose disconnects and quick disconnects for the BrewEasy system as well. This will be my mash out hose, so I'm going to go ahead and hook that up now, and all it really takes is this. Just go ahead and pull the collar back and in, and there you go. No screwing involved, nothing like that. We'll go ahead and, because this is hot, I'll use my gloves once again. Take the top hose off, and all you need to do is pull back here, pull that out, and set that in right there into your chiller, and that's all set. And we can even do that with the hoses. This will be my water out hose, which I will install right here on that part of the Terminator, and go ahead and run it out of the garage. Alright, so we've drained out and we're starting our boil in the brew kettle. We've got a nice rolling boil going. I've got my hops set out, my scale, everything's ready to go. I just want to take a minute to show this little gadget here. I use it religiously. My hop spider here works awesome. Very important if you have a plate chiller. Really helps cut down on sediment and getting stuck and jamming up your plate chiller. So just a quick little look at it. Stainless steel, uses a 4-inch tri-clamp, and then just a hop bag attaches there. And I just pop that bad boy down into the brew kettle. And usually I use my aluminum spoon here just to weigh it down and get it to the bottom of the bag. And I'm doing an IPA today, so we're going to be using a lot of hops, so very important to use that optional piece of equipment, but I find it helps quite a bit, especially with cleanup and Okay guys, so a lot of people have asked me how I sanitize my plate chiller, my Blichmann Terminator, and I've recently just changed my method. I've been trying out this method here where you go ahead and recirculate boiling wort through the chiller for a few minutes before the boil. So the way I have it set up here is kind of hard to see based on all the lines going everywhere, but I have my line coming out here through the pump out, and this is the wort in connection, and this is the wort out connection. That hose I have running back into the brew kettle. So what I'm going to do is just turn on my pump here, and we got, we'll see what the temperature comes out to be, 212 degree wort just cycling through your chiller here. And I'll do that for about 5-10 minutes. The boil's almost done here, and that will have our chiller completely sanitized up. Alright, well, we are pumping out. We are done with the boil, and we are chilling and headed into the conical fermenter. A lot of people have asked my setup as far as this goes. We have pretty warm groundwater when it comes to our city water here in Florida. So I can't just chill with our normal groundwater. It comes out of the ground in the mid 70s, if not 80 degrees in the summertime. So what I have here set up is I have a pre-chiller. I run hose water here to a pot with a immersion chiller from when I started, and that's a pot of ice right there. And then I run that into the Blichmann Terminator, again all with the hose quick disconnects. It runs through, and I have set my my sanitized hose up for chilling, and it goes through a thermometer there, which I find to be a pretty good product. The only problem with it is it can only get up to 140 degrees, so you cannot use it for the sanitizing step that we showed just prior to this. And right now you can see I'm pumping out about 72 to 74 degrees. I'm not sure if that comes out. So I'm going to have to chill it a little further in this fridge before I pitch my yeast. But what I can do is actually throttle this valve and slow it back just a little bit. So this will slow the wort from coming through the chiller, and that will actually get me a cooler temperature here. So you don't want to have this all the way open if you're not hitting your pitching temps. You can just throttle this bad boy back, and that'll bring you cooler temperatures here while you're mashing out, or excuse me, while you're pumping out. And we go up here into the conical where I have the tube clamped here just to prevent it from flipping up, and I have an aerator there going in. So this process takes a little while because my groundwater is so warm. I have to throttle the pump back quite a bit, but this is my setup for chilling through the plate chiller. Works pretty good. Outlet temperature right now 189.1 degrees down to about 72, 74 degrees, so not too bad. This process will take about a half an hour. Alright guys, one last thing I wanted to show you now that we're cleaning up here. I have a full solution of PBW all the way up to the top here in this brew kettle. And what I'll do is I'll normally let that sit overnight at about 180 degrees. It'll eventually cool off. This thing will be spotless by the morning. But more importantly, cleaning your chiller out. Here I have the end of the hose, the wort out hose, and I'm going to go ahead and clamp that here on the brew kettle. And you want to clamp it because you get some water pressure going, this thing can rear up. It'll make a big old mess here in your brewing area. And with these stainless quick disconnects, you can actually backflush this chiller without having to use a backflush hose or anything. Right here we have the wort in port, and that's coming from the pump from the bottom of the brew kettle. So what we want to do is swap these two. Now it's going to get messy for a second. I've got it filled with water, so it'll splash on you, but this is to be expected. So go ahead and change these two hoses. That one into there, that one into there, and now we have our chiller set up to backflush. So it's going to pump through the wort out port and then out of the wort in port back into the kettle. So you have a nice closed loop here, and you can recirculate PBW through the system for about 15 minutes, and you'll be amazed at the amount of gunk that comes out this way when you backflush it. So I'll wait till this heats back up to about 180 degrees or so. We're still waiting. We're about 120 right now. And as soon as it hits about 180, I'm going to start recirculating that. I'll recirculate it for about 15 minutes. I'll shut everything off, let it sit overnight, and you come back in the morning to a very clean BrewEasy. And that's how I clean my system. I go ahead and take the hoses off those ports when I'm done, let the chiller dry out, and everything stays dry. And that's how I store it. And then rinse and repeat. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope you learned a little bit. Like I said, this is just my process. It's open to interpretation, open to change. It's a constantly evolving thing. But this is how I've been pretty successful in brewing on the BrewEasy thus far after 6 months, 6 or 8 months or so, however long it's been out. Today I was able to brew at 76% efficiency with our IPA that we did today, so that turned out pretty well. I was happy with it. So again, thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.